What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of Sit Down Saturday, and today we are going to be talking about a number of different components going on and how they might weave and tangle throughout one another and what it might mean for us, for them, and for the future of some of this stuff. So, what components? IDW Transformers, Mastermind Reformatted, Mastermind Finity, I believe it's called, and what the future might mean for all of it. So we're going to get into that, but first we do have a little bit of house cleaning to do this week because we didn't have much last week because of the verses, right? And we'll start right away with the Bumblebee comparison. There was some gentleman that was making posts in all these groups talking to me. He could have just talked to me. I'm very accessible. He didn't have to talk to everybody else while talking to me. But he went on some rant of why Magic Square is better than New Age in all of these different ways. But in my video, Magic Square beat New Age. It may not have won every category that they thought it should have won, but it won. You want a flawless victory? It's not. And the Magic Square material conversation is coming. There's a reason why it feels the way it feels, and we're going to talk about it. Don't you worry. I'm not saying you're a bozo, saying you got bozo tendencies. On the other side, I had to hear about how there was no point to doing it because New Age has another B coming. Like, yeah, there is a point to doing it. It's to compare these, and then when the other one comes, we'll compare those. This is the same point, honestly. And Streetwise from X-Transbots. I don't think there was anything that I really needed to comment on except for the color. There was a lot of people that pointed out the color. And yeah, I will say it's a far less cartoon accurate color scheme and a far more toy color scheme in terms of the beige, like the particular white. It doesn't really bother me. And for all I know, there's some episode that somebody will point to and be like, no, you're not looking at The Streets Are Paved with Gold, episode 13 from season 2. Is that like, I'm not that guy, but it might be that color in that episode for all I know. All I can tell you is that it didn't really bother me. The transformation is a tough one to get through, especially going that way. But it's a pretty good figure overall, honestly. But I mean, how about Keith sending me something? Like, what an odd little history between the two of us, between Keith and I. But I appreciate it, and shout out to him. Like, he knows for sure at this point that I'm going to speak my mind about it. And he's still, sent it my way. So big up to him. The Darius, the Legends, the New Age Darius. So I didn't have everything tabbed in the video. I did get it tabbed in later on, and yes, it's more solid, but no, it doesn't look any better. It looks bad. It's a bad looking alt mode. It doesn't work right. It doesn't look right. It's off. To me, that's the end of it. The robot mode is cool, but the transformation in the alt mode is so off that it's like, well, the robot mode better be spot on. Nothing else looks right. Is how I feel about that. I know that the hives are super strong for Magic Square and New Age, and it's very interesting for me to kind of navigate in that space because I don't have a dog in the fight. I tend to like New Age stuff better. I tend to like Magic Square stuff less, and this was an example where I didn't really care for the New Age product, and I thought Magic Square got the best of the Bumblebee, and I still couldn't make people happy. It's just like, it's so funny. But I've gotten into this conversation before, but the lower the cost and price point of some of this stuff, the more bullshit I gotta hear. Hate to say it. I know you hate to hear it. Hate to know it. Hate to buy it. Hate to sell it. Hate to compare it sometimes. Anyway. Off that. The RC, shout out to Corey. He hit me up and said it does have more of a rocker than I gave it credit for. So strike that criticism from the list of criticisms, but it still is just not a great figure. And lastly, Exodus. And I don't want to waste too much time. I once again want to thank Dennis and Tim K. Don't deserve it. Very grateful for both you brothers, and look out for them on YouTube. Check them out. Collector's Bay, Nerd Crate, all that stuff. Check them out. But somebody said in the comments, if I didn't know it was based off of the Rodimus mold, I would never consider it to be. And that is the beauty of that figure. That's why that figure is so good, is because while it is a retool of the Rodimus, it has its own unique identity pretty much top to bottom. And as far as house cleaning goes, I think that'll do it. I hope you guys took care of your mothers and the mothers of your children over this past weekend. Be gentlemen. And with that, that should bring our house cleaning to an end. So let's go ahead and get into it then. What the question is can IDW sustain, right? And every time I put up a video about or like something from Reformatted or IDW inspired, I always get one sort of swath of the fandom that wants to tell me how much they hate it, which is fine. But in the same breath, I also have to go and be clear that it's probably the most successful Transformers comic book to date. And it had a really great run for those that did enjoy it. However, when Hasbro did did get involved with the storytelling elements of it, it did suffer, and it's never quite been the same since, a la Combiner Wars. But that IDW storyline did eventually come to an end, and nothing since has really popped. Nothing since has really had the same sort of energy or magnetism or laws of attraction regarding it. Which brings us to the question of how long can third-party toy companies, specifically MMC Reformatted, which always does sort of IDW-inspired stuff, how long can that sustain itself? Especially with the business model that they seem to kind of have at hand, where one mold has to pretty much guarantee 4 to 5 to 50 reuses of that mold. And how many key characters haven't been done? Now, I would make the argument that there's still a few out there that I would really like to see done. Prowl being probably first and foremost on that list. I would like to see a Thundercracker with the dog. However, the problem with that is, you know, if they do the Thundercracker, they're going to do all of the Seekers, and then we're all going to get exhausted again with Seekers. It never ends well. And in my opinion, the only ball that was seriously dropped by MMC was the Whirl and the Cyclonus. Those are just two that just never quite fit right, and I would love for them to be done properly. But when I look at my IDW shelf, obviously there's missing characters. Obviously there's holes. But between them and Make Toys, they really did knock out most of the key characters. And with rumors of the Fort Max still going to be made, among other things sort of circulating in the ether, for the most part, they had a pretty good run. It's also the last time that third party and the main line from Hasbro were really supplementing each other very well. The Brainstorm from Hasbro works really well. The Springer from Hasbro works really well. I have the Ultra Magnus in. It doesn't work as well, but it'll kind of do. I just love the character and want a representation of it. I mean, it seems like my only real option in the scale. Are there characters that I wish they would create? Of course. Nautica being another. I would like a better Skids than the Hasbro one. Like, there are plenty out there that I wish they would do. But for, like, the key cast, when you think of IDW, when you think of the characters that really mattered, we have to take a moment and be grateful that we got a pretty strong Wreckers lineup, we got a pretty good Lost Light crew, and we got the DJD. I would love to get the Scavengers. I would love for my Wreckers to be a little bit more fleshed out, but for the most part, we did pretty good. But once again, IDW faces the same challenges that G1 faces, where you already have done the more popular characters, and pretty well, with the exception of Cyclonus and Whirl, that who's going to buy the more obscure? And now we're stuck in that same cycle of pain where they can't get enough interest to get the more obscure characters, and as a result, you can't have a complete sort of collection. I love IDW, I love the run. I don't know how much further it can go. Which brings us to MMC number 50. Now, what I find interesting about 50, and there's rumors circulating about it, I've seen it out there, I'm not going to speculate, not this second anyway. But what I find interesting about number 50 is that 50 is an interesting number. It's a big number. It's a monumentous number. It's an achievement, right? And around the same time that we're looking down our barrel at 50, what else pops up? This IF line. This Infinity, I forget what it's called. But MMC unveils their fourth line, right? We have Reformatted, we have Ocular Max, we have the Remix line, and now we have IF. And IF seems to be in the same tone as Reformatted. It's not quite Reformatted, but if Reformatted had a family reunion, IF looks like it would get an invite. Now, I saw people hooting and hollering and jumping up and down about it being a female Tarn, like a gender swap line. That's not what this line is going to be. They've made that clear. This is a one-off. Now, what I'll say in addition to that is that what we know about MMC is they like to get multiple uses out of a mold. So this female Tarn may not even be what they're really after here. This may be the repaint to something else that they actually want to do. So what do we know about this line? We know that it's going to be relatively new, but based on things we love. And I think that we should all apply that to the blueprint of what this line is going to be. Now, I'll say that to say this. I don't know if I'm going to be interested in any of this stuff. And I advise MMC to be awfully careful with going their own route of toys. We've seen it not work very well before, in spite of how good some of them were made. Because it comes down to an interesting discussion that I think we've touched on before, at least skipped around in different videos here and there, but a cool toy is a cool toy. For that cool toy to have meaning, that's where it has to draw on something that you know and love. There's plenty of stuff that I've looked at that people have sent me that I'm like, man, this is awesome. The way it moves, the way it looks, all of the elements that make the accessories and all of the interesting stuff it can do, and wow, it looks cool. And I don't give a about it, have zero interest in having it in my collection, etc., because it has no meaning to me. Now, obviously, the world is bigger than me, but I do believe in like laws of averages, and I talk to a lot of people that kind of feel the same way, and they must represent a larger percentage. So if we look at the overall percentage of consumer base for this type of stuff, and then we subtract that percentage of people that are not interested in things that they have zero connection to, you're left with the scraps. Now, there's always that new car smell to stuff that's always going to get a couple things past the goalie. But eventually the cream will rise to the top. Now, I'm not suggesting that none of the things that they plan on making in this IF line will have any sort of attachment. I'm guessing that some of it definitely will. But this certainly does not. And this is their lead-off piece. So I can appreciate the kind of tough spot that they find themselves in, where their lead brand is based on a comic book that's now pretty much dead in the water, although still has a strong fan base behind it. And they want to find the next thing to latch onto, but there's nothing really out there in the ethos that's strong enough to latch on to. And I think I said ethos when I meant to say ether, but it's okay, bear with me. So they lose a line concentrating on a dead comic book franchise. Dead in terms of production, not in terms of fanfare. And at the same time, we get this announcement sprung on us of this whole new line that looks very similar in aesthetic, but more original designs. Stepping away from sort of line-for-line representations. This female Tarn character, I mean, by all accounts, is pretty much just an original piece. Now, it's MMC, and they have a reputation, and they have a connection with a lot of their fan base. But how long can that take it? I don't know if you guys remember, but Make Toys had a very strong connection with their fan base, too. There was definitely a hive for Make Toys, like there is a hive for Fans Toys and a hive for MMC. But it's only so long that you can pretend. It's only so long where the consumer has to ask themselves, who are they loyal to? Are they loyal to the property, or are they loyal to the company? And that's what got Hasbro in hot water in the first place. People left Hasbro for third party because Hasbro had to learn the harsh lesson that people are loyal to their property, not to their company. And if they're not careful, MMC could find themselves in the same spot. So I am expecting for IF to be the new Reformatted, and I am expecting for IF to have some cool ideas, but not necessarily be for me. And what you'll see is that maintain its space with Ocular Max in the Remix line, hopefully. And that's the odd balance that I think MMC finds themselves in today, which is one that I have sympathy for, honestly, which is between Reformatted based on IDW that's no longer here, and then this new line that people already have mixed feelings about based on the first release. This wasn't something where they put pictures up and everybody was like, perfect. They put pictures up and it was very mixed. And I think that this is where they have the majority of apples in their cart for the future, which does make me a bit concerned, and I would advise them to tread carefully. The fandom can be a fickle friend, but one thing that never changes is their love for the actual franchise. So I wish them the best. I hope I get the opportunity to check out some IF stuff. I'm looking forward to 49 and 50, I think, from Reformatted. And I hope that their Ocular Max and Remix lines continue to grow and sort of really have an impact. And with that, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Until next time, take care.